Hello everyone, Mege here, and I just woke up to the uproar behind the new State of Balance blog post from the developers. People are getting outraged by this post, some people are even suggesting a blackout. I would strongly advise against it. Honestly, I don't really see the point, and even some big figures in the community, for example Spliced, are having quite the negative opinion about this and the devs' work. Since I really love the game and want it to succeed, I'm not saying Splice, for example, does otherwise. He even states himself that he loves the game and he also wants it to succeed. I still decided to have my voice heard and share my opinion on this, since I believe we're kinda blowing it out of proportion, or if not blowing it out of proportion, we're still reading it in the wrong way. But before we dive in, let's just get some sad piano music in the background, cause it always works, it's so great. Alright. Here we go, State of Balance, Season 6 recap. Keep in mind, Season 6, so no Warden and Valk rework, no guard stance switch for static guard heroes, and stuff like that. The devs do acknowledge this. You guys probably know about this whole thing already. This video is not about reading you guys this whole thing, it's about actually going to the things that people dislike. If you want to read it all, just check the link in the description to it. So right away we are greeted by this 1v1 data matrix, which shows us the statistics for various heroes, their win rates against other heroes. So for example, we're reading here, let me open this a little larger, say Warden wins 51% of the times against Nobushi in duels. So before going back to this 1v1 matrix, I want to go down here to the 1v1 analysis, and specifically the Conqueror one, since this is what most of the community is freaking out over. So here the developers say Conqueror is still extremely strong in 1v1, we can all agree. But they also say that if they nerf his shield bash, then he might struggle against other top characters like Centurion, Lawbringer or Shugoki. They don't say like, they say especially. So these are supposedly some of the top characters. And why these three specifically? Because they would beat Conquerors by countering. In a way, this might be kinda true, like Lawbringer is based around countering, Shugoki can guard break he can guard break Wall Splat into Demon Embrace. Centurion I wouldn't really call a countering hero, but whatever. But what people are freaking out is that these characters are passed by top characters, saying that the developers have no idea what they're talking about. Now, I do agree, these characters are very bad. Shugoki is probably the worst character in the game. Lawbringer in duels, since we're speaking duels, is probably one of the worst characters in the game. Centurion is somehow okayish, but nowhere near top. So what's going on here? Where do they take these top characters from? It's easy, they're not making this shit up, it's simply from the matrix data. Look at the total win rate, and you can see that Centurion is 3rd, Lawbringer is, 6th, and Shugoki is 7th. So the problem lies in the matrix, which is data. This is simply data. They have collected this and they are analyzing this. They haven't made this up. So you might wonder, how is this possible? And that's very simple. As you can see right here, this matrix and all of their state of balance thing that they have done is based around the top 2.5% of For Honor players on PC and console. Spliced in his video said that they're also counting new players. I have no idea where it took that from. I think it simply might have taken it wrong. Is the top 2.5% of For Honor players on all platforms. What kind of percentage? We don't know. Maybe it's win rate, maybe something else, we don't know. We do know that there is another level of, let's say, legitimacy to this percentage, which is that they're not considering matches where the skill level of the two players are too different. So great, this seems like great on paper, right? Except it isn't. The biggest problem here is that the top 2.5% of players is still, and some of you might not believe this, is still too much. You know, the top players, the real top players like Alarnakin, like Setwix, like Skorban, these kind of people, the real competitive players, do say that the percentage that should be taken is much lower. I don't remember exactly how much Alarnakin suggested one time. I think he suggested even lower than 1%. And how can we not agree with it when the 2.5%, which while seems very low on paper, actually gives us stuff like a 3rd best duelist in the game being Centurion, followed by Pretty Work Warden, and having Lawbringer and Shugoki as 6th and 7th respectively. Like, what the hell is going on here? So what I'm saying here is not that the devs are wrong. Data is data. We shouldn't say the devs are just making shit up. They're not. Data is data, it cannot be wrong, it's simply collected. And their data obviously shows them, this data, this sample, that this stuff happens, Centurion War and whatever. So this whole blog post is based around this data. And of course, if we do not agree with the data, and agree with data is something that makes no sense because data is data, then there is something wrong here. What should we do? What the top players again suggested: shrink the sample size, shrink it a lot, and give this data much less weight. Now, let's get near the end of this first. So near the end, we had something very important here. The developers say themselves, we want to reiterate that the data presented in a state of balance blog is one of the many views we look to when deciding on balance changes. We also watch tournament streams, debate with tournament players on Discord and community workshops, do user testing, watch Reddit and YouTube and community outlets, examine open test results, listen to our internal designer feedback, test feedback, and so on. They also play the game themselves at home, etc, etc. And this is amazing. It's so good to know that this 2.5% of data, which seemingly makes no sense to us, is not all the balance around, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, one little piece of the whole balancing puzzle. That's great. You want to know what is really wrong here? That the only data we are presented in this state of balance post is this data. And that's just wrong. That is wrong because it gives the idea to the players, to the community, that this is everything they're balancing around. You really do not want this. Like, trust me, and this is mostly to the devs. If you truly are balancing around other stuff, please, oh please, do include that other stuff as well into this big balancing post you're making. Don't just talk about the top 2.5% data, which doesn't even make much sense to us. Talk about what the top players think. Talk about what you read on Reddit. I know you do this on the Warriors Den sometimes, but it's not enough. We need some official posts like this, because otherwise there's this huge outrage. And honestly, for a reason, because this data doesn't really add up to much. But again, I'm not really bashing the developers for the content of this. What I'm bashing them for is what they're communicating. Like, I don't think you want to communicate, let me say again, that this data is the only one you're using. And while you did write at the end a beautiful message, which is great, it's amazing, I think everyone who's getting outraged right now should read that. It's also just a little message at the end, and this whole blog post and the others do give the impression that this is the only data you're looking around. Because when you have stuff like you're talking about balance here, like you're not just talking about these numbers, you're talking about nerfing, for example, Conqueror Shield Bash or not, based on this data, and that's wrong. You don't want to balance around this data. You want to maybe take this data into account alongside all of the other data, even though I would suggest that this data be given much less weight than top players' opinions, for example, but still, you don't really want to balance around this kind of stuff, but everything of it, So when you're talking balance, you can't just show us these stats, these percentages. I think it's bad communication. And it just, in the long run, it just hurts. You just look at Reddit. Everyone is hating this blog post. Now, I also want to say some things in their favor here. For example, it is true that I don't believe Conqueror Shield Bash should be nerfed. Hear me out. I know the major part of the community thinks Conqueror Shield Bash should be nerfed. And that's just, I think that's bad. We want offense to be viable. This is something I've been working on in another video, which I will eventually release. But the reason Conqueror is so strong in 1v1 is not because of Shield Bash. As weird as that might sound to you, it is not because of Shield Bash. It's because of the many ways he can parry attacks and how good defensively he is. And if you visited the competitive subreddit, you would likely know. If you talk with top players, you would know this. So this shows, this does show here that there is a detachment, let's say a distance between top players and the majority of the community. And that distance, this is bad. This is bad, honestly. It's kinda inevitable, but it's bad. And it is one of the reasons why I am really considering making some sort of guides, of stuff to bridge this gap. I don't consider myself a top player, but I think I can be, let's say, I can somehow make some videos like to kind of bridge this gap, to have the majority of the community understand why some stuff are strong, what's going on at high level, what is options. You know, Freeze kind of does this. But I'm thinking about something more, maybe more practical. I don't know. This is just something I'm thinking on. I'm kind of getting off track there. Anyway, I think it's pretty useless to go into more details into these stats, since, as I've said many times, these stats are not really representative, as weird as that sound, of the game's state of balance, I would think. Something I really enjoyed is this little bit here. Light spam meta, assassin meta. This is very important, and I think this is a very huge message from the devs. An issue we read about from non-top players is that they talk about a light spam or an assassin meta. This has been difficult to approach balancing-wise for us, since these complaints often drown out in the evidence of how weak light spam is at the top level of play. When we look at the dataset above, we see Shaman is the only assassin at top out, blah 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 blah. So, I think this is pretty crucial to this whole thing. Light spam, assassin meta, these are very big complaints I see every day on my comment section on Reddit, YouTube, Discord, wherever. You see this a lot. I'm sorry to say, and this will earn myself quite a share of dislikes, I'm sure, but complaining about these things is silly. Hear me out. You have, let's say, the lower end of the skill spectrum, okay? Complaining about light spam and assassin meta, for example. Something which at top level play doesn't exist. And we're talking about competitive players. So you are Ubisoft. What do? What do you balance around? Do you expect them to balance around the lower end of the spectrum? No, that makes no sense, right? But if they balance just around the top level, then the lower end will complain even more. Like right now, you know? They say they don't want to nerf Conqueror Shield Bash, and I agree, and I think most of the competitive community does agree with that. They say this, and there is this huge uproar because people cannot fathom that maybe Conqueror Shield Bash is fine and he is super strong for other reasons. Like, that's a little baffling to me, honestly, and I think that's why they resort to this kind of middle ground, this 2.5%, which in the end does end up not satisfying anybody. Like, just to give you a couple of examples, I have one guy I read today a Reddit post, where this one guy said that his suggested changes to the game were to, among others, make all light attacks a minimum of 500 milliseconds. So no more 400 milliseconds light attacks, just 500 milliseconds light attack. And I hope I don't have to explain why that's very silly, let's say. Because just think for a moment, how is, I don't know, Orochi going to get attacks in when he only gets access to the he has non-blockables, his fastest attack is a 400 milliseconds attack, which is easily parried on reaction of top level play. So what's gonna happen? Turtle meta and all of that, and you know, a lot of stuff which we don't really want to happen again. This is just to show that sadly a lot of people have no idea how balancing works. I'm not saying I'm an expert here. Like, I think the only balancing I suggested overall was my proposed Warden rework, and a lot of competitive players said there were a lot of wrong stuff with it. I'm fine with it. That's how it goes, you know. I would honestly listen to competitive players more than everyone else. This ties back to the topic from before. But anyway, I think it's good that the devs have given this message that, you know, there is some stuff the community whines about, let's say complains about, that is a non-issue at top level play, and thus, let's say, with, you know, let's do this quite a while, the lower end of the spectrum skill player need to get good, let's say. You have to improve yourself, you have to look at yourself and not look at the game. Don't blame light spam, blame yourself. That's the thing. This is something I say in my guide as well. It's useless to get mad at the game. You have to improve. You have room for improvement. You have lost to a light spam Orochi, a light spam Berserker. I recently on stream, I was playing against a Berserker. And you know what happens? When you manage to actually find a pattern, and you manage to parry that 400 milliseconds delayed light on prediction and get your top heavy punish, it feels super good. Like, there is things you can do. You can improve. Now, I know Berserker is one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, one hero in the game, but that was just an example. So, I hope I don't come off as ranty or too whiny. I really want this to be read properly. Like, I think what we should be blaming and what we should really talk about in today's Warriors Den is the data sample. We evidently cannot balance around the 2.5% of players. That's bad. It appears it doesn't satisfy anyone. We cannot either balance around the lower end of the spectrum of the players. So what we are left with is balancing around top players, which makes perfect sense. That's what happens in all competitive games, I believe. What's the risk? Why do you think Ubisoft is not doing this right away? Are they stupid? They're not stupid. But they know that if they do say, right guys, we're just balancing around the, I don't know, top 0.5% of players, like just the top players. So what we do is we buff Gladiator's light attacks, okay? Which makes perfect sense. For example, I think Gladiator needs a buff in a way, because it's all about the zone. And then people will freak out and be like most of the people will be like, what the fuck, are you buffing Gladiator? Or for example, are you not nerfing Conqueror's shield bash while you are buffing his light attacks? And that would be great. I really think Conqueror would benefit. And again, I'm not a competitive player. I really think Conqueror would benefit from a buff to the rest of his kit. Except, you know, except shield bash. Since shield bash is pretty strong as it is already, but the rest of his kit is kind of lacking, except the defensive options. Again, getting off track here. I'm sorry about the camera kind of flickering the focus. I don't know what's happening here. So, ultimately, I hope you enjoyed this video. Do let me know what you think of this. Do come to the Warriors Den today. I think it's very important that we all tune in and let our voice be heard in the right way. We don't want to bash the developers. We want to let them know, at least in my opinion, that the sample is bad, and that if they are really balancing around other things beside the sample, can you please work? Other things beside the sample, then they need to show us those other things. We need to know what the other things are and the exact reasoning behind them. You cannot show us this little sample, tell us you are not balancing around this alone, and then suggest balance changes on this. That's bad communication, I'm sorry. Alright, hope you enjoyed this video again. Make sure to leave a comment. I'm looking forward to all the comments from you guys and to the complaints about the light spam. I guess it's okay. We can all have our opinion. Gonna see you all next time. Have a good day and make sure to tune in for today's Warriors Den. I'm gonna be there.